for a while, people were kind of like, they could list it, not for a while. So let's go pandemic to now, right? You could just guess on what the house was worth, and it was just going to sell for more, right? In a lot of places, and appraisals were going well. Everything was all great. If you had 5 cousins that were looking to buy something, they were going to, and they had the money and all that, deals were getting done. Now you need a little bit of patience. You need a little bit of creativity. You need to actually work. Like, you have to know what marketing is like. You got to market not just the property, but like open houses, right? People before were like, oh, I'll just sit there and people will show up. It's like, not anymore. You got to kind of make them stand out somehow, right? So basically it's like going back to the basics, just like in everything, every business, every podcast you ever listen to, when times are different, like people are going to think it's a hard market, but Gary Keller always said there's no such thing as a good market or a bad market. It is what it is. It's just the market we're in, right? So you just have to kind of tailor your skills to what the market is at the moment. And right now, for example, in Queens, there's over 8.5 months of inventory overall, right? So you're looking at a buyer's market. So what does that mean? That means that you have to educate sellers on what that is. You have to educate buyers on what that is, because they're going to go online, they're going to Google it, and they're going to think, oh, buyer's market, it means that I can offer what I want. I can lowball. I can, do an inspection and get a quarter off the price. They can go on HGTV, Bravo. They're going to think all these things, and sellers are going to be nervous because of that. And in reality, it's just that there's inventory that's, there's more inventory than there is demand is the common thought, but not here in New York. There's certain pockets that are like that. But you have to really be educated on what the numbers are and what they mean. So like, for example, at our office, we have Gloria and the team that sends out a whole bunch of stats and all that. And most of us aren't in this business because we're mathematicians. Some of you guys, might do some math stuff, but the rest of us, we're trying to avoid that. Like if it wasn't divided by 3 or 6, some of us can't do those numbers, right? So you just gotta, you really have to know, you have to take advantage of opportunity like that. So if the office is giving you numbers and you don't understand what they mean, you can always reach out to anybody and just find out what the story that the numbers are telling you, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with that sort of, idea, right? Where most are like, okay, 50 houses sold this week. There's 100 on the market. Like for most people, it's like, oh, awesome. That's all it means. Yeah. And, after a while, you got to realize that you have to know what it means. You have to compare what happened this year with the year before. You have to know how that impacts your home's value, or how it impacts your home sellers, right? Or the buyers that are out there. And if you don't know something, it's easy to fake it and act like you do, but it's going to catch up with you. So as an agent, it's okay to say, I don't know. You don't have to say it like that. You could just say like, I'll get that answer for you. Yeah. Just so you can be different and at the same time take care of them. Right. Because I think a lot of people are afraid to prospect, which is, it's very interesting to see. I guess Alex, how old are you?
I'm 36.
36. All right. I'm 37. Right. So our generation still knew how to talk to humans, right? Like in person. People that are younger that I see getting into the business, they don't, unless they're texting or DMing, they don't really know how to communicate with a person, right? And in reality, 98% of communication is done through the reaction of the people through their, body language, through their facial expressions, and then what they say, right? So that's something that I think is lacking in the industry right now, where people are very dependent upon, texting or digital communication, and not really know how to communicate the way you should and the way you educate people during this time, right? You got to connect with people. You got to get them to trust you. And I think I think that that kind of ties into the social media aspect and to like what we're doing right now, right? Like
Hmm.
we could be talking on a podcast without video, and people don't really see how we're reacting or what we're thinking, versus when you put content out there with your face on it, people can tell that you care, right?
Hmm.
Like, yes, you can portray whoever you want to be on social media. That's awesome. But if you're, like a comedic genius on Instagram, and when they meet you in person, you're straight pan face, like,
Awkward dude.
no, yeah, like super awkward. It's like, okay, you know, uh, this is not the real you. There's no authenticity there, and they can't connect with you. They're gonna have questions on what your motivations are. Who can I trust? Who is the real person, right? And during these times where the news talks a lot about how bad the market is doing, or how interest rates are doing this, or the lack of inventory, or whatever it is saying, you have to be able to interpret it on a micro scale, and you got to
Hmm.
show people that you know what you're talking about, and also that you're there to help them navigate it, right? You
Hmm.
can't be there just for the now business. You got to be there for the long term. You got to generate and foster relationships, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. I see people like you are doing well with that. You're doing this sort of thing, connecting with people in your own way,
Hmm.
generating content in your way, and every single person that comes into the business now, or has been in the business, should be doing some form of this, even if they're not
Absolutely.
comfortable.
That makes sense.
Like, what have you noticed in terms of that, like getting into the business and seeing how people are?
I mean, a lot of things. Right? um,
Yeah.
I think it exacerbated the people who came into the industry with false narratives and false hopes. My decision to get into real estate wasn't, oh, let's figure out this real estate thing and make, $1 trillion.
Hmm.
I went into it from a perspective of my family comes from real estate, right?
Okay.
And coming from a CPA background, you talk to enough wealthy individuals, there's like a trend, right? And as you pick their brains more and more, I didn't have an appreciation for it when I was younger, but it seems to always seem to revolve around taxes and real estate, right?
Hmm.
Can you build up a real estate portfolio, and can you leverage all of that, with the money and the finances involved, and marry that with the tax incentives that are out there for you to take advantage of, right?
Right.
So, you know, as we get older, I'm realizing, like, yeah, yes, I'm grateful and fortunate that my parents made a decent amount of income, right? But what's more is that the times that the income didn't cover it, they were able to use their real estate holdings to span that gap. It's lost on most, right? And people in our generation, and even people around me growing up, because for the most part, the culture is around go to school, get a job, make money, make more money, work another corporate job, right? And like you juggle this, but then as I got to my 30s, I'm realizing you can't retire. Like you're like looking at how you supposedly did all the quote unquote right things, but you're grinding away the best years of your life to maybe skate by when you retire. Countless narratives, and I got to the point of, you know what, I fought this for long enough. Let me stop being a dummy and learn, like, feet first, about a little bit about the family business, right? And let me do it on my own terms, right? And it opens eyes, right? Because I will openly admit that I was one of those knuckleheads who's like real estate agent, right? I mean, especially from a Korean culture perspective. I mean, I get it. I get it. In the States, real estate agents don't always get the best rap, right? Let me put
Hmm.
it that way. And from Korean culture's perspective, like in Korea, it's you're like lower on the food chain than where we are, right?
Hmm.
So and for me, it's just one of those things. Like, why am I going to be a realtor? Like, I have my CPA, I work corporate jobs. Why would I demean myself to become an agent? This is stupid, right?
Yeah.
And then you get into it and you realize, oh, there's a difference. There's like a massive difference between those who really hustle and grind and really learn the craft, and those who play realtor, and unfortunately they might do some damage on the way up, but they usually burn themselves out within the first couple of years, right? And you never see
Hmm.
their face again. So it's interesting. And because it's something that I nerd out on, it's one of those things I'm like, oh, like, you quickly start to figure out who does well and why they do well, right? Is because they do the work and it's work, right? And
Yeah.
it's more than your typical, your that maybe because I'm a realtor and I've gone through some of those motions. It's like the term like, oh, you're just a dressed up car salesman. And I'm like, if you were only to like sat here for a day with a realtor that's really doing work, it's mind blowing, right? And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
like people who come from like corporate backgrounds is like, well, I do all this other stuff. I could run financials, I could run analysis, I could run large data sets. Cool, right? But you're essentially taking jabs at things that aren't apples to apples, right? The workload is still just as hard, and in my opinion, how people used to look down on, you know, stay-at-home moms. I'm like, have you ever tried to keep a house and raise children? Like, do you understand the amount of work and effort it takes to properly maintain a home and properly raise children? Like, are you stupid? You know?
Right.
And so, like, I look at when I first came in, I don't know what I don't know. So, I have a meeting with Gloria, and they're like, "Oh, these are the fees." I'm like, "Holy crap, these fees are expensive, right?" Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
paying a crap ton of money, up front, and then there are like the commission splits and all this. I'm like, "What the hell? Like, this is dumb. Like, dumb. This is dumb." And then I sat down with someone in the business for a while. Like, dude, you understand you're a business, right? This isn't this. You're not like you need to separate yourself from an employee mindset. Understand that you are a business. You work in a brokerage, but you are your business,
Right.
right? So yes, there are fees, there are costs of doing business, right? And in the case of our office, and he's like, I can't speak to what the fee provides for you, but that's for you to find out. And I'm give it an honest shake, and don't be an idiot, and see what they offer. See what they offer, and then you do your cost benefit analysis. Take it from there, right?
Right.
And so at the time, I quit my corporate job, so I walked in and sat through the classes, and I'm thinking, I wonder if there's gonna be some of the other things that might usually like a friend wrote me into, and they're like, oh, so these are the sales pitches, these are the numbers, and hurrah hurrah hurrah, and they don't really give you real value. And as I sat through these classes, I'm like, wait, they're actually like hand holding you and trying to figure out how you could get your business off the ground, right?
Right.
Whether you take that or not is up to you, right? Obviously. And so I'm like, all right, so the fees weren't nonsense, at least not for me, right? A little more time in the office, or in the industry, and you realize, oh, like there are some firms that don't charge you that or anything at all. Maybe like a small fee to process documents and whatnot. And I see a stark difference in the amount of value that is presented to the agents in the office, right? Because if the running joke is that Keller Williams, for instance, is like the training ground for all the other brokerages in the country,
Mhm.
then why do we have such like monsters in our office who are destroying? They're easily top three in the borough, right? In the state, in the region, right? Like, how does that work, right?
Yeah. I
But
love those memes.
right. But it's unfortunate, right? Because me coming from the ground level, I go to these classes. A lot of those agents are brand spanking new, right? And we
Hmm.
started off in a market where you really didn't need to do work. As long as you could figure out a way to talk yourself into a listing, the selling portion of it wasn't necessarily work, right? Well,
Right.
not if you're doing the right things, right? And even then, it was very forgiving, right? That's not to say that I had it easy, because between lack of experience, but also the properties I dealt with were a little bit of like there were doozies, right? And I learned quickly that, oh, like this is kind of like when you start jobs, in that you could only have so much error, like that margin of error. Like you need to keep an eye on that, right? You can't just BS your way through things, because now there are legal ramifications. Did you lie on some of these things? Did you just guess and hope for the best? Because if that doesn't pay off, there's a lawsuit headed your way, right? At the very least, you might lose your license, right? There's a whole like list of things you need to master to get this down. I'm seeing quickly in this, what I'm going to be rolling into my second or third year, and a lot of the agents aren't there already. Why?
Hmm.
Because the market shifted, and now no matter what you want to say, it's headed towards more of a normal market where people, I mean, there's in my mind, there's still a little more balancing that needs to happen. But now we're in a phase where if you don't have skills that you're building, you're not going to be here very long. You're not. I'll openly admit that I am not going to be out there cold calling. I'm not going to sit there on the phones like some of the heavy hitters do. But I'm not under any kind of illusion that, that I should be killing it with, $100 million GCIs and all this stuff. For me, I'm a proponent of understand what you're doing, right? Make your decisions as a business owner, make your decisions as an adult, but don't lie to yourself about what your consequences are. And so if you like, there are some agents that make a healthy living based off of their social media. They could leverage that and use that as their funnel. But if it works, double down on it, right? But don't. That's what kind of gets us, right? I think we're old enough to where we could smell BS, and it's like, oh, I'm not gonna door knock. I'm not gonna. Okay, cool. So what are you doing? I got a couple posts up, and it's these buyers, these sellers, it's this, it's that. Like it could be that partially that, but how much? Like if you're gonna say that your social media is your prospecting, it's reasonable. But then why do I only see two posts? Like, they said it should be 80-20, 80% of your personal life. All right, cool. What steps have you made to turn those posts as well, right? Because that's still part of your brand, right? Like if you are, like that's the way we teach it anyway. If you have a page that's geared towards your real estate, also include your personal life stuff, right? Let them know that you're human. It's better for your clients to know who you are as a person. But what have you done with that? Is it just you post it into the ether and you're like, oh, I'm done, now call me, right? Or did you figure out a way to follow up with some leads, follow up with other funnel methods and techniques so you could actually contact them, or make it easier for them to contact you at the very least, right?
See, that's cool that you're seeing that already in your third year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the mistake that I commonly see is they see that, right? They see somebody killing it. They have, I will give you an example. A guy in Long Island, very well known on social because he's entertaining. He's an agent. He's got like 187,000 followers on Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's purposeful marketing. What he does, he hires a team. He hires a videographer. He has professional sound. He has professional video. He invested in his business. He didn't want a cold call. He didn't want a door knock. He didn't want to do this and that. And at the same time, the way he continues to grow his business is by adding, more legs to the chair of that business, right? So he has his social media, and then he adds something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're noticing that, yeah, people want social media and the internet to be like a miracle where they just write something once and, oh my God, that post was amazing. It's
Mm-hmm.
viral. Now you are the mega agent, but it's not that. And what I see from, like, for you being here for as long as you have, like, you've put in the work. I've seen, you're visible, right? You're not a
Mm-hmm.
secret agent like a lot of these people could be. And yeah, it's work. And some people say, oh, I'm not tech savvy. And it's like, okay. And then they'll say, well, I'm not going to door knock. I'm not going to do, you know, cold calling when it's legal. I'm not going to do FISBOs and expireds when it's okay. I'm not going to do, I don't like to write. I don't like to be in front of the camera and do videos. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like real estate isn't going to grow through osmosis,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there has to be something that you put in. And for you to notice that in that short time, that's huge because, and the other thing you said that kind of stood out is, right, you came in with visions of succeeding in this business, right? But
Mm-hmm.
everyone has a certain level, right? Like the main book here is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Not every agent has to be a millionaire, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you have your business and this is something that you do and you make what you want out of it, so you make enough money that makes you happy, or it's what you want in your life, that's a success. You don't have to push to that next thing, and you don't have to do all the things that you don't want to do, right? But if you're saying you want to get to a certain level and you're not doing the things to get there,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're going to struggle in this business. That's why, what is it, 89% might be higher in the first
90
five
something.
years fail. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's because that's the lack of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many resources now. Like besides the stuff we have here, you have Keller Williams. What is it? First of all of the classes we have in the office, but you also have stuff online. You have KW Connect, which is basically the YouTube of KW. You have YouTube where you can choose your coach or whoever you want. You can literally learn anything you want
Mm-hmm.
online now, right? So all you have to do is match your what you want to your actions, and you're going to succeed in some way, shape, or form. right? Is it going to be easy? No, but it's simple. It's just, you see what people do to succeed, just do the same things.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just going to sit there and don't become a professional student either, which that I will give you a shout out for that. Like I've seen you come, you went to the classes, you tried to learn, you know, you knew that you didn't know. So you tried to
Mm-hmm.
learn as much as you can. You're bringing it in, you're learning the tools, and you are not a professional student where you just come to class and that's all you do. It's like, went to college already, went to elementary school already. Like you learn and you go do, right? And what you said, our job has legal ramifications, right? There's certain things that people think could be innocent mistakes that can cost you your license, can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines and violations, and some things could put you in jail. So, like, it's not something to just dabble in. Like, if you're gonna do something, yes, learn your craft and really learn the important things. And if you don't know what those are, do what you did. Reach
Mm-hmm.
out to people who have succeeded and pick their brain and learn what it is that you don't know, right?
It's so easy for us to forget or lose sight of a lot of things, right? Especially when nerves get in there or like bad narratives, get in your head. But when people tell me like, "Oh, I can't, I don't know," da da da. Here's the unfortunate truth about business ownership, and a lot of things in general, right? It's you're not supposed to know, right? And it's the difference between those who succeed and those who stay put or worse is a mentality of, "Oh, I don't know, like how am I supposed to do this?" And all right, so how am I supposed to get this done? How do I do this? Right?
Yep.
Especially in a business ownership perspective, it's your job to find out. That's your job. Your job is to find things out, right? And on a lesser form, and I can, I speak for, my professional career. There are oftentimes you don't know, right? But if I knew everything, I wouldn't be working corporate, right? Right? Like more times in most instances in your life, you don't even realize, but there are a lot of things you don't know and you find out, right? The difference here
Mm-hmm.
is finding out is what gets you money, right? Solve problems. Problem solving is what gets people paid. The bigger the problem, the bigger paycheck, right?
Yep.
And so for me, it's like, I don't know what to talk about. Well, I just had a workshop on how to use ChatGPT to at least either give you the content whole or at least give you ideas to drill down on, right? If you don't want to do that work, I don't know what to tell you because it's there, right? That's for me, that's low hanging fruit, right? And now if you want to get into like, I want to get into ultra luxury real estate. Okay. That's a bar. That's okay. Like that, I could see being something you really need to work through, but I don't know where to start. Pick up your camera. Your camera is worth a laptop, right? It's actually expensive than most people's laptops at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is one of the biggest, or best supercomputers you could have had if you were to look back 30 years ago, right? So what's your excuse now? Grab your camera, right? It doesn't have to be a DSLR. Grab your iPhone, grab your, Android, whatever. Point it at your face. And if you can't think of anything else, Google search top 3 concerns of home buyers, top 3 concerns of home sellers. Pick a topic based on that. Do even 30 minutes of research, right? Fact check a couple of things and let's go run, right? Or talk about your family members, friends asked you or misstated, misquoted about the real estate market. There's everything. But you know what? If you want to go down one step further, if you're really that stuck, come talk to me. We have other agents in the office, right? Piggyback off their content. You don't need to have some mind blowing new angle on something. You just package it up, like make it yours,
So
right?
let me dumb it down further because you did it perfectly, right? But you follow Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So his big thing for a long time was document versus create, right? So literally, I don't know the answer, right? I don't even know the question that I'm asking. First day you're here at the office, right? Hey, I'm doing a class. I'm learning this class about X, Y, and Z. People connect with you because they like you at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
stages of your career. That's how you could get your first deal, right? So let's just say, yeah, you started first day. Hey, look, I just got my license. I can't wait for the first class at KW. That's your first piece of content. Second day, hey, this is my second day in the office. That class yesterday was awesome. I can't wait to share with you what I learned. Every single day. You just keep doing that. You're not even saying what you learned. You're just saying you're working hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? People admire that, right? And then what happens after, let's say, a month of doing that every single day, right? And we're just talking about 30 seconds of a video. After a month, you actually know something, right? You know, coming to our office meetings or whatever brokerage you're with or wherever you are, or you're YouTubing stuff, you're learning your craft, right? You YouTube real estate. How do I succeed? You learn something. For example, today, Alex, do you know off the top of your head what interest rates are?
No.
6.14%. Why do I know that? Because one of the lenders was in our office talking about that. That doesn't make me an expert, but I know that because I heard it. I just regurgitate it. That's something that somebody in our world could use, right? Because a month ago or 2 months ago, it was at 7% or 7 and change. They couldn't afford to buy a house. It went down. Like I had a conversation today with somebody on the phone, for example. They were like, "Yeah, I can't buy right now. Interest rates are too high." Okay, that's what the news is saying, right? You hear that everywhere. Now, too high is a subjective term. It's not black or white, right? Like for me, $1 million house might be super expensive. For somebody else, it might be way below their budget, right? So 6.14. Now, when I was like, so what is the interest rate right now? Do you know what the interest rate is right now? Guy's like, oh, I'm not really sure. I'm like, well, it's 6.14. He's like, really? Oh, wow, that's a lot lower than I thought. Boom, that opens up an opportunity, and I just educated somebody. So what happens in that scenario? I'll take that and I'll make a video about it, about what just happened. Not, and then over time you're educating and you're making people feel a part of your world. And yes, over time you might, if you do it the right way, you'll connect with enough people on social that it will be a funnel for you,
Right.
right? But like you said, you have to put in the work. But it doesn't have to be okay, if you're too, I'm going to say it, if you're too lazy to research stuff for your business, just recording yourself doing things, not even saying stuff. If you can't do that, then let's just take a time out, reevaluate. Do you want to succeed in any business? Not just
Mm-hmm.
this, but anything at all,
Right.
right? Be honest with yourself.
And
Because,
that's where it gets interesting, right? Because like, touching on what you mentioned earlier, you go to these courses, and obviously, if you're new, you're learning things. Well, here's another little added tidbit: record what you learned, right? And even if it turns out to be something that maybe you have 5 views on, guess what? Those just became spark notes for you, right? And for those who are too young to remember what that is think about is the notes, right? If you forget, oh, what was that thing? Well, now you have your own archive of things that you learned, right? It's amazing to me that you're gonna keep finding this, and obviously the other side of, well, my personality isn't for the camera. I'm boring. I'm lazy. I'm not awkward. Like, not lazy, but like I'm awkward. Or I'm old. I'm ugly. I don't have a face for the. You want to start off without putting your face on camera? Do it, right? But for me, it's whatever will get you to start, right? After a while, once you get your chops, and I've said this previously too, if the content is trash, good, right?
you know,
And this is where we say time and time again, you don't need perfect, you need progress, right? You need something done, right?
yep.
And for bad content, if you scroll through my early things, it's bad, right? But
Well,
it
search anybody that has made content. Any
right,
any creator, the first things they made were complete and utter trash.
right. And the beauty of the system is consistency, right? As you force yourself to do this, you're on the hook to do it more, right? And so your skills will get better, right? The way you actually create your content will get better. But the beauty also is, I mean, in this society where our attention span is so low, the beauty is the bad content gets buried, right? And
Yep.
so once you have enough of this archive done, the other side of it is you will have a good wealth of also good content that you could recycle. Why? Because people forget, right? So you want to do these buyer guides, these seller guides. You could literally, and this is what Graham Stephan does. These are some of the biggest, YouTubers in the finance space. A lot of times they'll take their content and they'll repost it every year and makes them money, lots of it, right?
Yep.
And now, if you want to tweak it, go ahead and do it, right? But this, I don't like these excuses. Don't. don't hold for me. But the other side of it is for those folks who just didn't know, you get a pass, right? But let's get moving. But if you're gonna keep fighting on this, then all right, so okay, look, this isn't. Then what is your game plan? Like at the end of the day, I want to know that you, instead of just knowing things, what is your game plan then? Right? Because if the game plan here is I want to get some listings, it's like back in high school when your friends say they're gonna retire and they're gonna own a business. All right, cool. What's your game plan? I just want to get some listings. Okay, how? like
Hmm.
like what is your path from A to B, right? It's yeah. I want listings too. I want to clear six figures in commissions too. But it's the how, right? Like tell me that you have another different pipeline set up. Then okay, Alex, keep your mouth shut, right? Then you don't need social media, right? We have crazy beasts of agents who don't really, at least as far as I know, have a crazy social media presence, right? But there's always something. Like, what is your something, right?
Yep.
Figure that out. But if you're saying that I don't know how or this that, I don't want to hear it, right? Come talk to me. Come talk to some of the other agents because, from my perspective, the majority of the agents that at least all the ones that I've bumped into have been nothing but helpful as long as that you respect their time.
That's all you ask.
You
That's
know.
that's that's literally it. And like with your point, when people say I'm ugly, I don't sound good, um, you know, I'm nervous, this, that, and the other. Like any negative they say about themselves, I can't help but say you're right. I'm not gonna be the type that goes like, oh, just feel better about yourself. It's like, no, you're right.
My thing is just so what, so what,
Like, well, whether you think you're right or you think you're wrong, you're right. Like
right?
it's, at the end of the day, you need to let's take social media and throw it out. Let's say you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do that. How are you going to duplicate what it could do, right? Like, how are you going to get? Let's just say you have a very terrible video and it gets 5 views. How are you? What other form of marketing are you going to do where 5 people saw it for
Mm-hmm.
free?
Yeah,
Where else are you going to get that return? Zero.
yeah. And what drives me crazy is like, when people say those, like when it's like traits. I'm like, so what are you gonna do when you sit down with your client? Like, do you think that they're just gonna not know? Like, they're not gonna find out? You have to meet them, right? So you're gonna just be a remote agent? I mean, that could work. I mean, I know there are some agents that do a lot of remote work, but that's not the case for at least all the ones that I've bumped into. So it's like, so what are
Yeah,
you gonna do when you have to meet with your buyers or sellers? Did you just suddenly is this gonna like snap like that and suddenly you're Mr. Gorgeous and you got Rico Suave going? Like I don't that
exactly.
logic doesn't hold, right? So if anything, for me, my mindset is good. Be awkward, be ugly, right? But be you, right? Just don't be a scumbag, right? Just that for me, that's my only caveat. Don't be a scumbag, right? And
That's it.
so, and the reason why that makes sense is in this case, then you find your tribe. Like outside of like being presentable, obviously because this is a job, and I realized I had to make that clarification after I talked to Mr. Saint Gerard, but um, people aren't hiring you because you're hot. And if they are, I don't know what to tell you, right? That they got their priorities skewed, right? Can you work effectively to get the job done, right? Especially when you're looking at, in Queens, and like my listings have been in the $1 million range. They don't care how you look, like they don't care if this. It's can you get the job done? Can you get the property sold, right? Can you at least bring the buyers in without like can you do not stupid stuff? Is essentially what it is. But doing the stupid stuff thing is learning. Get your reps in. Get your reps in. One way or
Yep.
another, get it in, right?
And dude, you don't even have to practice on people. Like, let's say there's a whole bunch of you that are new, or there are agents that are willing to script practice with you or run things by them. But the thing is, if you're not in front of people, you're not going to know what you need to say. You're not going
Mm-hmm.
to know, what kind of questions or things you're going to be asked, right? So that's a very important thing to do. But what you do, jump in on the mastermind, jump in on all these different resources we have, you'll learn a lot faster,
Mm-hmm.
right? The learning curve is going to shorten, and you're going to be able to know way more, way quicker. And if you really are driven, and you have at the end of the day, we haven't even talked about it, but a big why as to why you want to achieve something in this business. If you connect those two, you'll get further, farther faster than,
Absolutely.
most, right?
Absolutely.
Like, dude, you're how many? You have two kids, right?
Hmm.
Like, didn't that light another fire under you
It did.
that you didn't have before?
It did. When I first started, I didn't really have to worry about that per se, right? I mean, we had Teddy, but at the time it wasn't registering, and then I realized I can't just play at being a realtor and expect, for me, a marriage, right? For me, it's a partnership, right? And so, can I look the people in my family in the face and say I did my part,
Right.
right? Because say what you will, I still have to make money, right? So, thankfully my wife was supportive and say, give it a shot, right? You've worked hard in this corporate, circus, and it looks like you needed a break, and this seems to be something that really interests you. So yes, go ahead and do it, right? We had some reserves and all that, but look, give it a shot. Especially when the second came around, and if funds dry up, what are you gonna do? Some other place in the country you might fall behind, not New York, right? Like we need solid income, right? So if you don't perform, then go figure something else out, right? And even if I do get another job, do I give up my real estate? Not if it matters, right?
And that's
And so
right.
it's just a series of how many times can you get kicked in the teeth and you pick yourself up and say, okay, well, that didn't work. So let's figure out how to get it to get going a little better this time around, right? Put your teeth back in and let's go, right?
Yeah. And you have two options with that, right? You're either going to just go action first, where you're going to get kicked more,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to, have a steady progress and learn as much as you can, as quickly as you can, so that there's less getting kicked and more successes,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, but if you have like what you said, where you have no choice but to be, to hold up your end of the bargain. Yes, you have somebody that was supportive, and that let you, you know, go after it 100%. That, I mean, that's critical.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're blessed for that, right? But it puts you in a position where you have to succeed, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to get into that mindset in this, and I'm not talking about everybody, like we were talking about before. Some people just need 2 or 3 deals a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's great,
Right.
cool. But for those of you that want to be the next Sirhan or whatever you're watching on TV, for the ones that want to be a capper, every day you come in, you look at the stuff on the wall, you see the people on the wall that have reached a certain level of
Mm-hmm.
success, and you want to be in that conversation or higher. You got to give it your all,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is
Absolutely.
no other way about it.
I had an honest conversation with myself, and it's not, and I had no one else to blame but me, right? And I'm okay with that. I am, but it's also because as I go through this, I went back into why did I specifically, outside of learning, right, of how the real estate side works from an agent and like the actual like transactional side of it, like why did I do this? It's because I wanted to help people figure out how to build wealth. I mean, that it's just that simple, right? Do you need to buy a home? No, right? But from a tax planning and just wealth generation thing, the way I understand it is you buy real estate, again, use tax law to, especially essentially speedball your wealth building, right? And so a lot of it is we grew up in an era where everything had to be this traditional way: get your 20% or pay it all in cash. In New York, you out of your mind, right? And I openly admit that I was one of those like, oh, you have to put 20%. Don't pay this PMI. You're out of your mind. And then I realized there are a lot of folks who aren't paying 20%. They're not, right? And they're still building up multi-million-dollar real estate empires. Why? Because they figured out how the system works. How do they find out? They asked realtors, they asked lenders, they asked lawyers, they asked, right? You ask the people who in the field, right? So from an agent perspective, I mean, this is my like earnest ask, right? And do it, don't do it, that's up to you. But do your best to be a student of the game, right? Don't just look at it from this is how you prospect, this is how you follow up, this is how you list the property. That is important, yes, right? But understand the intricacies of this, because there's no end to it. There really isn't. So the agents that I talk to, and like you could tell they're really in the know, they blow my mind, right? They do. They yes, you need to know the market conditions. Yes, you know how to maneuver, and I do want to get into that for the agents now, because this market is going to be crazy. They understand why it's important. There's a great wealth transfer happening, and it's in the trillions, tens of trillions of dollars are going to be transferring from the boomer generation to the millennials, Gen Zs, whatever, right? The problem is our generation and younger don't know squat, right? And for people like me who are chopping at the bits, and the investors that I'm talking to, they are all foaming at the mouth because they know that they, a lot of these kids have been raised on certain quote unquote values or truths, right, that don't hold, and they don't understand financial education. They don't understand how to maintain properties, right? And all that is going to transfer to people like me, people like my investors, people like other people who are ready to go. I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but as an agent, you need to know how to handle this, right? Because especially on the younger spectrum, I guess I know it doesn't matter, right? That next farm is gonna be critical for you. Why? Because the people who are getting inheritances, maybe you won't, maybe you'll sell their real estate, maybe you won't. If you don't, maybe you be their confidant. I mean, in this position, we're like, hey, look, this is how you might want to manage this portfolio, right? You have 15 properties. Maybe one, if you do decide to sell, talk to your financial advisor and talk to your folks, right? But if you want to sell, give me a call, right? I got a tax person who's in real estate who could help you out, X, Y, Z, right? Now you just became the best realtor, right? Or maybe cool with the kids, right? Hey, like when dad does this, are you gonna sell, right? And if I'm being honest, me personally, for my friends, generally, no, don't sell, don't sell, right? But unless my friend's a knucklehead and be like, look, maybe you should sell and do something that you know what to do with that money with. Maybe your thing is stocks, right? But honestly, at least I'm having this honest conversation, and hopefully I'll be the first person you call.
Having that, I don't think people appreciate how important that is to build that kind of trust with people. When there have been times where I've been on listing presentations where I know a lot of people would take the listing, run with it, sell it, make a nice commission, and
That's
that's
it.
it. But there are times where, and I've said this to people that are worried, I don't know where I'm going to go when I sell. There's some people that can't go anywhere. And I've been at the presentation where be like, I've crunched the numbers, I've been through everything. In all honesty, don't make a move. Think about it. There's some people that owe so much on their mortgage where if they sell it, they come out with, let's say $50,000, and they want to live somewhere and they don't have additional income to work with.
Mm-hmm.
You're pretty much stuck, right?
Yep.
Like, so every scenario is different, but you being the trusted resource and being able to provide that advice, that's priceless, because others will go ahead and be like, oh yeah, no, you should have figured that out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, nah, our job is to educate the
Yep.
public as much as possible and have them make decisions that are, you know, are beneficial to them in
Mm-hmm.
one way or another. Like that's literally our job,
Right.
like their best interests at heart, right? So, and what's cool about doing the right thing though in that situation? It comes back fourfold, like you
Mm-hmm.
said. Maybe their kids, or it could be that, listen, they see that their neighbor's struggling selling their property. They tell them, listen, you might be having issues. This is the guy for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're done with this contract, call Dave, call Alex, right?
Yep. Yep. Because
It comes back around.
I'm becoming more and more comfortable with the fact that you might not like what I say, and ultimately it might cost me a sale, but at least that I shot it straight with you. I think it's going to continue to be that way for a majority of agents. It's going to be very transactional. And my argument here is you are going to be in a situation, most likely, that you are either going to have to grind your face off to make the same amount of business every year, or you're going to burn out and you're going to be another, realtor grave, right? It's just, it's a fact,
Yeah, another
right?
statistic.
And I get it because, there's only so many relationships you could hold on to and keep, but this is why we build systems, right? Like at least at my time in KW, it's systems are critical. You might not know every little minutia about every client that you will come across, but can you build up a system where you could like, oh, Mr. Johnson, yeah. Like, can you refresh that and touch base with them, right? You don't always have to be their best friend, right? But you should have enough respect to understand where they are in their stage of life, right? Things are big events that are going on, and be able and be willing to talk to them.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's when you do the right thing and that happens, and over time you're fostering those relationships. You can't hold on to every relationship like they're your best friends, even if you wanted to. Time
Mm-hmm.
doesn't allow for it, right? But there are some great friends that I met through these transactions. Why? Because you helped them with something that they really need help with. Our job is not just to it's not just supposed to be transactional, at
Mm-hmm.
least from my perspective, right? Like the reason I got in this, you building, helping people manage their wealth, for me, it's part of that. part of being a part of their story, helping them. Like I have that romantic part of the real estate part, right? Yes, you have your investors and stuff, and you're still helping them with the wealth aspect, but you have families that, the kid had their first steps here, like their parents might have had their last breath there. Like there's a lot of emotional components to it. So if you're human and you really come from a place of contribution and you help these people out, it does bring a lot of fulfillment to
Mm-hmm.
you if you let it. If you come from
Of
that
course.
angle as well.
I
So
find, that last point I do find interesting, right? Because the way I explain it is you know, a home is something that's very emotional. A realtor's job is to take the emotion out of the transaction. But this where people get twisted is like, so you need to be a cold-hearted salesperson. No, 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 no. What I'm saying is have empathy for the people involved in the transaction. But emotion will not necessarily be effective when it comes to, say, getting the price point for your house, right? Like, properly listing a house requires just cold math. It's math. I mean, there's an art to it, obviously, right? But just
mhm.
because I like you and I feel really bad for you doesn't mean that I could list your house for $1 million when your block is selling for 600. It doesn't make any logical sense. It doesn't. And if anything, you're gonna do your clients harm. You will do them harm, right? Because you wasted your time, you're wasting money, right? And you do yourself harm now because you don't recoup costs until you make that sale, right? So, like,
Yep.
one of my properties, I must have blown thousands and thousands of dollars on this thing, and if it didn't sell, I'm eating that cost, not them. I'm not going back to them and be like, hey, by the way, it cost me $7,000 to market your property for this, up until now. Can I get that back? No, they'd be like, piss off, right? That's again, do your job correctly, right? And unfortunately, sometimes it's telling you things that are hard to hear. Like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but your house isn't worth $1 million, right? Given the condition of your house, everything's updated, brand new, gut renovated, fine. Maybe we'll get you 650. But in this market, $1 million doesn't make sense.
And see that you're bringing that up, right? So this is where this market is very difficult for people that haven't navigated something like it before, right? Because they'll rely on, well, my neighbor sold 6 months ago for this, and I have the same this, that, and the other, but my garage is newer. And they would be right if it was six
Mm-hmm.
months ago, right? But there are other economic factors that impacted that. So now they're not getting that. And we have to be able to have that conversation at the beginning. And there's going to be people that get listings over you because they'll say, yeah, we're going to get you that price. No problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just my marketing and my this and my that. They'll sell, they, what we call it, they buy
Mm-hmm.
the listing by doing that, right? Where, somebody like you and me that we're talking to them from the truth, we might lose out on the listing, but I rather sell a home than
Mm-hmm.
list a home, right? Like I could put it on the market for $1 million, and like you said, every month that passes by, they still have to pay taxes on it, repairs, all of the normal costs that come associated with it. So they're hurting themselves at the end, and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be a part of that. I want to make sure I come from the truth at the beginning. And when it's happened before, where like they'll list with somebody else, exactly what you and me are telling them happens, they don't sell because it's just taking too long. They get fed up with the process, and then they come back and say, Alex, David,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. You were right. Sorry. Let's put the house up
Yep.
on the market.
Yep. Or the contrary, I mean, for me, it's a worst case scenario where the agent talks to them. Okay, we got to chop it down. We got to chop it down. They sell it, and it happens anyway. But now, all realtors are, just grubby, money grabbing, thieves. It's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate, right? So let's break this up because I do want to give a little more value to the new agents out there, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, so let's preface this by saying this is not personal financial advice by any means, right? In case we get to that topic, but also we don't have crystal
Yeah.
balls, right? So there's no guarantee the market can still go up and down. This is just based off what we know, right? Or at least understand.
Mm-hmm.
So for new agents going out there, right? What would be your bits of advice in terms of how to maneuver through this market, whether how to talk to their clients?
All right. So let's start with number one. Number one, stay completely educated on all aspects of this. So I don't want to bring politics into it, but let's say there's two channels and they are giving two different sides of the story, right, for a specific thing going on. You want to make sure that you know both sides so that you can come up with your own professional opinion on what's going on, right? And what I mean by that is turn on the news right now and you'll hear that the that the real estate market crashed, right? Or that it's crashing. And you need to be able to interpret that. So you can't say to somebody, it's not crashing, and that's it, right? You actually have to have some tangible evidence to show them what is actually going on. So, as an example, between November of last year and November of this year, there's 35% less transactions going on, or have been 35% less transactions. That's on a national scale. What is it in New York, right? I think it's actually close to that number here in the boroughs and Long Island. So you have to have those numbers. And if you don't know them, every month they come out. They have them on NAR. You can search on our LIBOR. The numbers are there. If you're in our office, you can go to the team leader. Pretty much anybody in leadership, they'll have the numbers for you, or we can get them, right? So stay educated so you know how to talk to them, right? Just knowing it for yourself. Then the other thing you're going to have to do is understand that not everyone is going to buy or sell, right? So you will be prospecting. You'll learn how to do that. And what's prospecting? It's business acquisition. Let's call it that, right? So you're trying to get new business every single day. That's your number one job, right? So let's say that there are 35% less transactions, right? That means that there's still transactions going on, though. There's no month that has passed by where there have been no sales, right? So you have to familiarize yourself with that, and you have to be able to explain, okay, let's say you're targeting a specific neighborhood. You need to know how much was that type of property in that neighborhood selling for a year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, last month, this month. You need to know those numbers so that you can speak from a perspective of authority, right? If you have that, then no matter what they come up with you, with the objections that they have or whatever, you're hitting them with facts, right? You're not guessing. You're not saying, oh, it's really good right now. You're not saying anything that's not factual, right? Then you got to realize that you're going to lose out. You're going to lose out on people like we were just talking about that will promise the moon and the stars when it's not reality. And you got to be okay with losing out on that client, because it is way better to lose them at the beginning than to set false expectations, right? You got to realize that your habits are going to be the most important thing through all of this, because let's say you're going hard every single day, you're prospecting and you get nowhere. Day 1, day 2, day 3, we're at day 30. You're going and you're getting nowhere. You got to keep going at that habit, because day 35 could be the day that you get that one lead that changes your career, or that changes your year, that changes your month, right? It has to be the habit. It can't be, how do I feel today? It has to be, this is what I have to do today. There's the ideal schedule, your perfect schedule, something like that. It was from one of the classes we took. And basically, every morning it should be miracle morning for real estate agents. So that follows another great book, The 7 Levels of Communication. It talks about savers. So silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. That's every morning. You take an hour of your day at least to do those things at the beginning, so you take care of yourself first. That way you're mentally ready for the rest of the day, right? And the rest of the day is going to be taxing. Every day we're business owners, right? So every day we wake up unemployed. It's that simple, right? So you have to have those habits in place so that you can be healthy enough. We're always on the go. So eating at McDonald's every day isn't going to help you succeed at this business. Like, and I genuinely mean that, because I went from, like, if you followed me on certain things, I've gone through every scenario with that, like from never doing anything athletic in my life to, doing Spartan races and stuff, because life changes and whatnot. We all get older, but also you have to maintain your health in order to keep everything else going, right? And that's something that people lose. The stress in this business is high, even when you are the, millionaire real estate agent. That doesn't mean stress goes away. It's the biggie rule. It's no money, no problems. So there's going to be stress. You just have to have ways of mitigating it, right? So if you have those in place and you come from a learning-based mentality where you're watching and learning and just soaking up everything around you, and you internalize it and then make it yours. So don't try to come up, like my mistake was I was trying to get scripts from all these people and be like, I'm going to make my perfect script from all of these. Just pick one thing and run with it, right? Because let's say today by accident you get a listing appointment and you don't even know what a listing appointment is, you can ask somebody else to go with you. Split it 50-50 and you just paid for your first education. And also some people it might be a good time to join a team. You know, there's going to be people in this business that leave, that are not hungry, or that just can't do it right now, right? And if you can jump onto a team that is getting leads and giving them out and you're ready to work them at a high level, you can make a lot of money, right? Even in a transitional market, even in a buyer's market, whatever it is, there are deals to be made, right? The money's out there. You just have to get it. And I think as a newer person, you don't have the bad habits built in, right? There's other people that, like, you've been in it, you've been succeeding for a while, you get a couple commissions checks, now you take your foot off the gas, and it's time to chill. Let me go on a 3-month vacation, right? Come back, oh, I got no business. But there are people that want to live life like that, and I respect that, where they want to work 6 months out of the year, and the rest of the year they want to be vacationing. Oh, I get that 100%. But you have to be able to work that, right? And I have seen there's one agent that comes in mind where that is their number one thing. They want to enjoy their life as much as possible, and when they come to work, they come to work. The person's not the most approachable, but I'm a big fan because when it comes to work, head down, do what I got to do, get my clients, take care of them like family, get out, and I'm traveling doing what I want, right? So whatever it is, however you want to structure your life, design it. Choose how you want your day to be, right? You want to be, you still want to rank in Call of Duty on Xbox? Cool. Awesome. Do it. Be number one in the country or play every night. But you have to make sure that you're working enough so that that is okay to do, right? Like, you don't have to give up your life for this business. You can have a counterbalance, never a balance. You're always going to go in extremes. It's going to be, work hard, relax hard, right? There's not really, you're not going to keep that middle ground. It just doesn't exist. So you got to get comfortable with going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Gary Keller talks about juggling. You're juggling, basically, some are glass balls where you can't let them bounce, and others are rubber balls. So you could be juggling, make sure the glass never falls. So family, your health, the important things, you can't let those fall, because then everything else falls apart, right? You can not make calls today if your kid has to go to the doctor. Kids first. It is what it is. It may not be the most convenient. Kids don't like to do things when it's convenient. So, you take care of the kid first, right? Wifey needs extra attention. You take care of wifey, right? Those are the ones that are non-negotiables. Then when it's time to work, it's time to work, right? You have to, and for new people, you got to realize people think your job is not really a job. Just because we can technically be anywhere, right? Like, oh, I got a flat tire. Can you take it, on Tuesday at 1:00? It's like, would you be asking me that if I worked, at MSG or at a hedge fund in the city at 12:00? No. So you have to set that boundary from the beginning. So setting boundaries is essential, because that will murder your mindset. Like, if you don't set that with your family, those expectations from the very beginning, where they think, yeah, I can always call Dave in the middle of the day because he may not be in an appointment, or he might have the time. You can't let it go that way. You just, under no circumstances, because that starts building up, right? You need to build that momentum, keep it going. And it really, Alex, this business comes to three things. It's from Ben Kinney, my favorite agent in the company for years. He went from a cable guy to being usually top 4 teams. He's usually 1, 2, 3, 4. He said, you just have to learn what to say it enough times, and say it to enough people. That's really all this business is. There's nothing else that you need to know. Everything else that comes to play, you have experts in every, if you want to be more towards investors, you can go there. You don't have to pick that at first. When you first start, you get whatever business you can and you run it, you run with it, right? But over time, you might realize that you enjoy a part of this that maybe others don't. Like, some people love short sales. Some people never want to see a short sale in their life. You have some people that work with investors. Some people that hang up on every investor that calls, right? Like, you get to choose how you're going to build this. So as long as you follow those, and over time you kind of mold yourself into who you want to be, you're gonna have a good time with this.
Absolutely.
Hours are hard, but it's great at
It's
the
the
end of
life.
the day.
Since you touched on all the mindset and the building portions of it, guess I'll be the jerk who breaks into potential practical scenarios for this coming year.
Let's do
So
it.
I just pulled up the stats, and it looks like as of December 2022, absorption time is 7.7 months, which means yes, we are in a phase where buyers can potentially make disrespectful offers. Sorry, right?
Hmm.
And depending on how the Fed reacts, we are looking to be in some more hurt for this year. As a new agent, understand. So if you are on the listing side of this, then you need to explain to your sellers that if even in best case scenario where it is listed correctly, you might find yourself in a situation where people are going to lowball you, right? And the game plan here is, well, for me personally, don't throw those out yet. However, you want to work the negotiations, right? But keep taking them in. The buyers who aren't willing to play ball, let's say in multiple offer scenarios, they weeded themselves out. But understand that the market is going to be somewhere where you might need to keep touching base to see how is the market reacting. Is my price still making sense? And it's the weird thing, right? Because when I first started, one of the things that stuck with me is in the past when we ran comps, we ran it 6 months, a year out, right? If it's a unique property, maybe 2-3 years out, right? If it's like unique, it was like, dude, you can't even use a comp 6 months out right now because the interest rates keep fluctuating and the price keeps spiraling out, up, down, sideways. Understand what comps are relevant, right? And you touched on this earlier. I had a neighbor who sold it a year ago for 1.5. That was a year ago. We're not even remotely in the same world, right? So you need to explain to your sellers that, hey, look, this is a completely different ball game, and you need to explain to them this is what the comps are right now because interest rates keep going up, down, sideways, right? And that's going to affect purchasing power, right? So that's one thing. But on the if you're more commonly, new agents are on the buyer side, right? Understand that yes, the market is dipping. You do have more power in terms of what you can negotiate, but don't necessarily be a knucklehead and say, $1 million house, I'm going to give you $200,000. That's crazy talk, right? And understand that you might be seeing more houses, but don't get it twisted. You're not necessarily going to see 500 houses suddenly pop up on the market, and then you're gonna have your pick of the land either. Like I think you want to be cautious there, in my opinion. If a seller says there's no inspection, can you tell them to piss off? Yes, right. In my opinion, yes, right. Although I don't think you should waive inspection ever, anyway. But like, can you negotiate things like buying down points, right? Can you negotiate closing costs? Can you negotiate things like of that nature? Yes, right. Learn what those are. Ask an agent, right? And for the folks in around your circles who says I can't afford a house, maybe right now is the time to have that conversation. Hey, look, I don't know what your thoughts are on why you can't afford a house, but why don't we do it this way? Why don't we talk to a lender, see what you can actually afford, and see where that price points make sense now because prices are dropping. And from me, because I have an understanding on the investment side, if especially for the young bucks out there, I mean, you have a higher threshold for discomfort, right? Or you should, I would hope, right? Not to say that I think you should live in a crack house, right? If you have been historically renting, and by now, like I find that in my 20s and 30s, a lot of times my friends lived in the same like borough or same area, more or less, right? Well, did you live there for more than 5 years? If your argument is that I don't know where my forever home is going to be, guess what? Your first home statistically is not your forever home ever. Average time in a house is between, well, depending who you ask, 5 to 15 years. So if it's your starter home, deal with what you could afford, right? And you do something like a house lock where guess what? You now have housemates, right? Again, don't break any laws here, right? If you need, talk to a lawyer because there are legal ways for you to have a housemate and not rent out individual rooms, right? Or if you're in another part of a country where that is legal, hey, have at it, right? But the beauty here is now you could speedball the way for you to get into this house, own it, and maybe have cash flow on the side. If they're paying parts of your mortgage or all of it, guess what? The money that you would have paid towards rent or the mortgage is not there. You could allocate it elsewhere, right? Can you lifestyle creep? Yes. My recommendation: don't do it, right? But these are things you need to have ready, right? And go talk to your buyers. Hey, look, if you're gonna keep waiting for this like massive bottom of like a 50% drop, I don't see that happening. Don't have a crystal ball again, but I don't see that happening. But if you are in a financial situation where you could afford this house, lock it down, knock it down. Go talk to your tax professional. Go talk to other people. Don't take my word for it, right? And see how this makes sense in your overall financial health. Agents, please, like if you don't know, go ask a professional, right? Outside of your expertise, and if you don't know the real estate side of it, find a mentor, right? Thankfully, the office that we're at has an abundance of really down to earth. I mean, just open hearted people, and that's probably one of the things that kept me going, honestly. Um, but these aren't excuses to have like, oh well, I don't know. You also have Google, right? Like there is no excuse except for the fact that you know ignorance. I'm willing to forgive, but if you're being told, and like people aren't informing you, and you're keeping your eyes and ears closed, then you're not coachable.
And you can't bury your head in the sand and make believe things aren't
Mm-hmm.
going on, right? Like to your point where you were saying, let's go back to the big collapse that everyone likes to use when it benefits them, right? So like buyers will be, oh, we're waiting for a big drop like 2008. 2008 was a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? And it was bad, very bad. And it was led by real estate, right? Across the country, you had equity drops of homes around 60%, right? Like you're talking Nevada, California, Florida, Arizona, Texas, places like that, right? That was at the worst, the peak worst. In New York, because this is different than everywhere else, our worst was 20%. And that was at the worst ever, right? So, or in our lifetime, let's go within our lifetime, right? So while you have opportunities, and there's going to be more opportunities for buyers that are financially ready, willing, and able to do so, right? As far as disrespectful offers, when you are a listing agent, you have to prepare. We talk about expectations from the beginning. So even when the market was where sellers had all the leverage, right? I always prepared them for lowball offers because I wanted to let them know that it was going to happen. And at the end of the day, yes, could it insult somebody? Totally. But if you set that expectation from the beginning, saying that there will be offers that are borderline insulting, but can you blame them for trying, right? Like at the end of the day, buyers are trying to pay the least amount they can for it while you're trying to get the most out of it, right? So that doesn't change in any market, right? That's always the goal for both. The thing is that buyers may think that they have more leverage than they actually do in a market like this. Because yes, you're right. In certain situations, there could be buy downs negotiated. There could be seller concessions. There could be all that stuff. But there are some very sought after neighborhoods and sought after properties that isn't going to fly, right? It's just, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your offer. Like I always say, that's the reply always. Thank you so much for your offer. I'll talk to my seller and we'll get back to you. And I'll talk to the seller, give them all, present it exactly as it was said to me or documented, and then they make an informed decision. Because as agents, some of us start thinking that we make decisions. We don't. We give our advice, and they choose how to sell it. It's their home, right? Same thing with buyers, right? You can tell them all. You can walk them through everything. You can, take a horse to water. You can't make them drink, right? So you can educate a buyer. You can tell them not to present an insultingly low offer because you're doing your homework too, right? As an agent, you're trying to see, okay, so yes, you can't go back a year. You can't go back 6 months. That's why we've talked about it. You got to keep a close eye on this. You got to look what happened 3 months ago, 2 months ago. What was the interest rate then? What was it now? How was demand then? How's demand now? Right? Because at the end of the day, yes, it swung over to a buyer's market. You said
Mm-hmm.
7.7? Okay. That's still not as high as it could go, right? And demand has been, I mean, crazy for quite many years, right? And there hasn't been enough prop inventory to keep up with it, right? But interest rates were a big factor where it knocked out a lot of people, right? The people that need to come to reality are the buyers that are thinking they're going to wait for 2 and 3% again. And for that, you need a catastrophe to happen, right? And I don't even know if the economy can hold going back to that. There's like experts on both sides of this that they talk about it, sunshine and rainbows, and it going absolutely
Hmm.
terribly this year, right? You see it everywhere. They keep on talking about it. That's why we have to take a close look as local experts and not just what's happening globally, nationally. We have to know how is that impacting us here, and even here, like we were saying, type of property, location, neighborhood, that also matters because for example, the when the pandemic was happening and people were leaving the city, properties along the subway lines, they weren't as sought after as they were for for me for all my life, right? Like everybody wanted to be near the 7 train or the E and the F and all that stuff to be able to get into the city, right? Times changed, but we had to keep an eye on that, right? Now things are changing. City opened back up. People are starting to go back to work. Yes, still not at 100% capacity. There's still a lot of work from home. There's 50-50. There's this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of different variables we as professionals have to keep an eye on, right? So we have to be able to explain to a seller or a buyer why yes, why no, right? And if we look, and Alex, you're studying the numbers, if you see that in this neighborhood, this type of property, there's enough options for this buyer to go, okay, you're not going to negotiate with me, we'll buy your neighbor's house. Okay, that's a possibility, right? But at the end of the day, as long as you're professional and you let's say you did have a buyer who wants to throw a trash offer, you should always tell the listing agent if you're working with them, right? Listen, I know this is a very low offer, but this is what my clients have instructed me to present, and I'm presenting it to you. Let us know if your seller has a counter offer. I understand if they don't, like the counter offer could be list price. That's fine. Us as buyers, as agents, excuse me, we have to keep an eye on that, right? We have to keep an eye on that house and see, okay, so we saw it in January. It is February, nothing. March, house is still on the market. They haven't changed the price. Hey, buyer, do you still want this house? Yes? Let's go back, right? They can be more patient now, right? Because there's more opportunity, but not at every price point, not at every type of property, not in
Hmm.
every location. So that's the kind of difficult part for a new agent is to navigate the differences. But you have to kind of look and see, and you can look at this every day. You can draw a circle on our MLS, see what sold here last month, what the houses are going for, what they went for, what they're going
Hmm.
for right now. Look at the active prices. Some people, are urging to price competitively, like with okay, if you see that all these listings are, let's just give a ballpark, 1.3, 1.2, 1.1. If the seller needs to sell and is okay with the price to walk away with a certain net dollar, you might want to price lower than the rest of the competition out there, right? So already the buyer's getting a house at a discount. So you kind of have to see that, and it's very difficult at first because you really don't know what you're looking out for as a new agent, right? You don't even know that, what does this neighbor sell for? Why did this house? You don't even know how to compare, like, you don't know how to do a CMA or market analysis, right? So those are the kinds of things that you're talking about where you really need to learn how to do those basic fundamental things in order to have these higher level conversations about where the market's headed. And the market's going to change, right? So it could get worse. Then, as you said, it's been volatile as far as the interest rate. So it goes up, it goes down. So when should they lock in? When shouldn't they? All those different types of numbers that need to be navigated. And you need to have, as an agent, be surrounded by a good team, meaning have lenders that are ready and always on top of their clients, like, hey, the rate went down today, we should lock in today for the closing on Friday, right? Like, you need to have those people in place. Hey, Alex can help you with tax season. These are the tax benefits that you can get, right? This house versus this is what it would impact your taxes. Multifamily, depreciating assets, this, that. There's so many tax benefits that come with owning a home that people don't know about, and I don't like to talk about it because it's not my specialization. I want my partner or my partners that are in that field
Mm-hmm.
That's you, right? And then when they start talking to you about real estate, that's when Dave comes in, right? So as a new agent, just get to know those numbers more and more and watch it. Like the news is actually important for you because not from you're learning from the news because you need to learn as an agent. You need to learn from the different resources we get, which is KW, which is Inman News, which is all these real estate specific things and more local. But you have to know what the consumer is getting every single day, and that's CNN, CNBC, Fox, whatever. You need to know what's being said out there, and you need to adapt your business. So definitely keep that in mind for the newbies as far as numbers. And if you don't know what numbers to look at and you're here in our office, just reach
Mm-hmm.
out to Gloria.
And as a side note, for anyone who's looking to get into the real estate industry as an agent, we do have, I think, right up till now, we still have the free real estate licensure courses. So if you are curious about doing that, reach out to me and or Dave, and we'll get you set up.
Yeah, and every month we have the career night for those of you that aren't even, you may be finally realizing that 9 to 5 corporate jobs, might not be the thing for you, or you want side hustle or whatever. We have that once a month. So yeah, hit up Alex, or yeah, if you have any questions, hit us up, and we'll hook you up with that for
And
sure.
it'll be one. I guess for me, I'll leave you guys with a what will likely be one of your common objections of whether from the seller side. Well, I'll give you both, right? Seller and buyer. If the market keeps, because everyone wants to hunt down that really bottom end deal, but from the buyer's perspective, oftentimes like, oh, well, real estate's going to drop more. Well, maybe, probably, right? But here's the thing: it, if you're worried about being underwater on your house, especially if you're in New York, I like to look at historical trends, right? And look, again, obviously, we don't have crystal balls, so I can't guarantee, 1,000%. But I mean, the trends are strong, right? And so even if, let's say, you bought it within the next couple of months, and the market drops another 10%, let's say, right? Well, unless you're going to sell within the next year, that number doesn't matter, right? Historically, real estate will continue to go up, right? And so if I know a lot of people like to lose their minds over like, oh, I could have gotten it cheaper, or like we spent, it doesn't matter, right? We 5, 10, 15 years down the line, whenever it is you choose to sell, you're not gonna care about that marginal difference. It is like right now it looks like a big number, but over the long like scheme of things, it's marginal. It's marginal, right? From the seller's perspective, look, I mean, depending on what your situation is in terms of how much equity you have left in there and things of that nature, sometimes it's just a matter of what is your reason for leaving, right? Is it just because you're curious and you just, shopping? Then that's one thing, right? And honestly, a lot of good agents will sniff that out and they're not going to work with you, period, right? Because you get a lot of those. They just put it on for the market just out of curiosity purposes. But if it's a need, then there are ways to manage, right? You might take a haircut, but if you've been there forever, I mean, what's a couple $1,000s, in list price, right? It might be tens of thousands, right? And again, it seems like a big number, but if the life you're going to is more secure, stable, stress free, then for me, what's the cost of that, right? And I can't speak to your financial situation, but oftentimes I find that people lose their minds over it, and then after they move, they're like, I can't believe I was like losing sleep over this. I mean, there's the in between, right? There's those folks who like, I want to sell this house, but I'm gonna stay local. That, yeah, that's gonna hurt, right? And like Dave said, sometimes there's just no good answer, right? But in the case of the winter birds, or what we call the halfbacks, those who move to Florida and then come back to like say North Carolina type of situations. Sometimes they're like, we realized that it was like $10,000-$20,000 difference by the time we got moved in and settled in, but that wasn't even an issue because we bought our house in cash, so it didn't matter anyway, right? The amount of equity we had left in the New York house was enough to just buy this house in cash and have some left over. And so yeah, I mean, at the time we were furious that we lost maybe $20,000, but $20,000 to enjoy the rest of your retirement, they're like, it meant nothing. It meant nothing at all.
Well, that's why motivation is the most
Mm-hmm.
important thing because it's not that's why also real estate is complicated, right? So it's emotional and all that. Sometimes you may, when you're negotiating something in a deal, it's money, right? But it's also terms and conditions, right? So it's the same thing with your motivation. So, why are you selling? Okay, you want to move to Florida to move closer to your grandkids. Okay, you're going to take a hit, like you were saying, right? You're going to take a hit on selling now versus if you sold it last year, right? Well, are you going to wait? This is just an example, 5 to 7 years for that price to come back around, or do you want to spend those 5 to 7 years with your grandkids in Florida and just take that much less for the
Mm-hmm.
sale here, right? So money isn't everything, and we're not at the point where we're talking that this is a dramatic difference. Like, we're not really seeing that steep of a decline in prices here in New York, right? But we may be getting to a point where this is more of a
Mm-hmm.
conversation, right? Where you are getting a bigger hit where it might go, that hurts a little bit, but what
Mm-hmm.
hurts more, right? Is it this or is it where you want to go, right? And I had, for example, I had a sale, Alex, and I don't know if you've had something like this, but where the sale of the property covered, like they basically broke even, right? So that's not great. It's not wonderful to not have made a ton of money on your investment, right? But because they were able to leave this property, they were able to buy a house that has already appreciated, I think, over $160,000 over what they paid for. So sometimes you do have to take some losses for that gain in the future, right? So sometimes the math does work out in the other way, right? Like, especially like some people are worried about selling when prices are going down, right? Well, depending on your situation, if you're selling when prices are going down, you're also buying when prices are going down, right? So you can make up a difference or even
Mm-hmm.
profit in a way, right? So that you gotta. That's why real estate is a very case by
Of
case
course.
scenario. You
I
bring
think
up
they
good
a lot of
points.
people lose sight of that opportunity cost, right? Because it's more people are prone to look at what they're losing as opposed to what they're gaining or the potential gain, right? And I'm not immune to that, right? But for me, it's the other side. It is that, right? We're losing X, Y, and Z on the house. Well, we're not last year, right? Maybe you should have called us last year, right? If you want to be a little like petty, but um, we're here right now, right? And so I'm focused on what we could do right now for you, either right now or going forward, right? I'm not worried about the past. The past for me is just gives me insight into what potential trends and cycles might look like, but we're here now, right? So if you're saying that you want to wait a year, and typically within a couple of years, a year, two, maybe three, a lot of times prices do bounce back and whatever, right? That's 3, 4, 5 years is out of the question. All right, so then what are our moves right now, right? And it goes for both sides, right? If prices are going down, you might be in a situation with the other place. Well, prices are going down there too, right? But when it goes up, like that's what a lot of people I think tend to lose sight of like on the buying side too. Well, the prices, if I sell too high, where am I going to go? Well, the other places might be higher, but well, like in terms of percentages, but it's still going to be cheaper for you, right? So if you're getting into that situation, you might still be in a position where, but yeah, you might not have made it a killing on this house, but if that house has a better appreciation potential, you might be winning anyway, right? On the buyer side, they're like, oh well, I don't know what I'm going to do if the prices go up next year. Well, then shouldn't you buy now? Or if you think these go down lower, well, my problem with that is people who try to time markets seem to burn themselves more times than not, right? So for me, it's not timing the market; it's time in the market, right? And I know that sounds super cliche, but growing up, I've heard how many times people are like, oh, they were going to wait for the market to crash. I'm like, great. And a decade passed. I'm like, where you at? Still renting. There's only so much you can do in terms of if you always been my thing, especially for residential. Look, an investing space is different, right? That's just cold hard math, right? Does does the revenue that bring in make sense with the value of the property, right? It's math, right? But from a residential standpoint, it's can you afford it? I'm not telling you to stretch your bank accounts and make wild decisions. Can you comfortably afford this property, right? Can you afford to live in this property for the next 5 to 10 years, right? And you might not love the house, but here's the beauty of it. From a tax perspective, did you live there 2 out of 5 years, right? Well, great. So if there are any gains, you can sell that thing and pay zero in taxes, right? or at least on the capital gain anyway, right? Sometimes I think that's where people kind of get stuck. I get it. It's a lot of money for most of us, right? Even for me, like putting down down payment on what is now going to be like a $900,000 house is going to hurt. However, however, take a look at it from a bird's eye view. If the property drops in a couple of years, you're more than likely you're going to be okay, right? If you bottomed out, great, good luck, right? But the other side of what a lot of people also are forgetting now is that there were a massive amount of people who bought at 2 and 3% interest rates. And as an aside, a good portion of them were also investors. They're not gonna let go of these properties outside of some kind of disaster, where like death, divorce, or something of that nature. Maybe unemployment, if that gets really severe. They're not giving that up, right? From like if I bought a house at 2% and it was my primary home, even then I'm gonna be like, you know what? I'll rent this bad boy. You know why? Because my mortgage payments is nothing, but rent right here might be $3,000-$4,000. So outside of being crazy, why would I give up potentially $1,000-$2,000 of cash flow? No, it's not happening.
Well, see what you just said, that's part of what holds on, that's what kind of limits that buyer market, seller's market, right? Because you have all these unique factors going into it, which that's one of the ones that also keeps inventory low, right? So demand, inventory, it's a very weird market, with all those factors in play. And it's going to be very interesting to see it going forward. Like Gary Keller actually said it's the weirdest market he's ever seen in his career. And he's been doing this since like 1983. So like it's going to be interesting to move forward. I'm excited because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be able to benefit from it. And I think as agents, even new ones that like they're coming in and they're like they're not going to sell 10,000 homes right away. This is where you're going to learn how to be a really, really good agent. Like if you kill it in this market, when things change and things are selling like hotcakes,
You're,
I mean,
you're
you're
gonna
going
be
to be
a
balling.
murderer when this goes up, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, to
yeah.
to TLDR this for people who want to just skip to the back end. Um, New agents, this job is hard. It is. It's simple, but it's hard. It's hard, and for the next, at least in my estimate, the next year or two especially, it's gonna be really hard, right? If you are not skills and systems based, you are going to suffer. And in my estimation, the 90% burnout rate for agents is going to speedball this year and next year. That's just my prediction, right? I think they said something like 30,000 agents have already quit or some crazy number, right?
Hmm.
With that said, habits, mentality, right? You could come in with a bad mentality that needs to be fixed. Habits, you could work on, right? So understand that this market is going to be harder, but if you have the drive and determination to be consistent and problem solve consistently, you're gonna be in good shape. And again, if you are on the fence and maybe finances are a problem, you want to sign up for the free real estate course, reach out to me or David. Anything else you want to add, Dave?
Let's just keep on adding cliches, right? So, just I guess to end it for me, work comes before the belief, right? So, like, even if you have that bad mindset or you don't believe in yourself, but you have no choice, like, you got to make this work some way, some shape, some form. Um, you just got to put it in the work. And literally, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, if you guys haven't read it, pick it up, follow it, just literally follow that, read it back and forth until you understand it. You're good, right? But the work comes before the belief. So you got to put in all the hard work. You don't even have to believe it's working. Like, it doesn't matter if you believe it's working or not. Just keep doing it. And if you follow that model,
You,
it's going to work, right? And it doesn't
you
matter
mean trust
what's
the
going on in
process?
the market, right? Trust the process. That's it. And also read Shift if you haven't read that. It's covered. Like, this market has happened before. It's not new. And then nothing, like you were saying, it's going to be hard. One of my life mottos is nothing worth having comes easy. So, if you really want this and you want that life that you have in here, you'll
Absolutely.
do anything to get it,
So,
right?
Dave, why don't you do us a favor and let folks know where to reach out to you?
Oh, that's easy. Well, most of the time I'm on Instagram at really original at David Garcia KW, just like that, all together. Or you could always visit my website, sellyourqueenshome.com.
Perfect. So, I hope this was helpful. If it has been, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff and jazz. And with that said, thank you for your time. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Boom.